My name is Nelson Rodriguez, but everyone calls me Old Man Nell. I'm 67 years old, and on what should have been one of the most peaceful days of my life, the day I asked my daughter if I could stay with her after my stroke, everything changed. She looked at me, no hesitation, and said, "You're too much work." Just like that, I went from being a father who gave up everything to a burden nobody wanted. I'm going to tell you what they did to me, how the people I raised, loved, and sacrificed everything for turned their backs on me. But before I begin, please let me know in the comments, where are you watching this from? To everyone here supporting this community, thank you. Your messages keep me going. And if this is your first time here, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and hit the bell. You're not just joining a channel. You're joining a family that believes no one should suffer in silence. Now, let me tell you my story. I'm recording this from my bed in Sunset Manor Rehabilitation Center. It's been 37 days since my stroke, 37 days since my world turned upside down. The nurses here are kind enough, but this isn't home. This was never supposed to be home. Look at these hands. Go ahead, look close. You see those calluses? That scar across my knuckles from when a piece of rebar caught me wrong in '89? That burn mark from a soldering iron that slipped when I was doing side work to pay for Sarah's prom dress? These hands built everything my children have. Everything. For 30 years, I worked myself into the ground so Sarah and Michael could have what I never did. A real education. A clean start. A chance to be something more than their old man ever was. I was 19 when Sarah was born. Barely knew how to change a diaper, but I knew one thing. She wasn't going to grow up poor like I did. Not if I had anything to say about it. When Michael came along 3 years later, that promise doubled. You want to know what sacrifice looks like? I'll tell you. It looks like getting up at 5:30 a.m. every single day for 3 decades. It looks like throwing on work boots that never quite dried out from yesterday's sweat. It looks like driving to a construction site when your back is screaming and your shoulders feel like they're on fire, because there's no such thing as a sick day when you're the only thing standing between your kids and the kind of childhood you had. But that was just job one. 3 o'clock came, and while other guys were heading home to crack open a beer and watch TV, I was rushing to the cab company. Had to be on the road by 4. Had to make the evening shift count because that's when the real money was. Airport runs, business dinners, people going out who tipped better than the daytime crowd. I'd drive that yellow cab until 2 in the morning, sometimes 3 if it was a weekend and people were feeling generous. Then I'd come home, wash the smell of other people's lives off me, maybe grab a sandwich if there was anything left in the fridge, and catch 3, maybe 4 hours of sleep before it started all over again. Sarah used to leave me notes on the kitchen table, little drawings she'd made at school. "Daddy working," she'd write under a stick figure with a hard hat. I kept every single one of those drawings in my toolbox until the box got so stuffed I couldn't close it proper. Still have them, actually. They're in a shoebox under my bed here at the rehab center. The nurses probably think I'm crazy, but those drawings, they reminded me why I was killing myself. Michael never saw me in anything but work clothes. Not once. Even at his high school graduation, the day I was so proud I thought my chest might burst, I came straight from pouring concrete. Dirt under my nails, dust in my hair, smelling like sweat and cement mix. His friends' fathers wore suits and ties, shook hands with clean fingers. I wore Carhartt pants with holes in the knees and boots that left little bits of job site gravel wherever I walked. But you know what? I didn't care. I had a plan. Every dollar I made I accounted for. I kept a notebook. Still got it right here in my nightstand drawer. 3 columns. Bills, necessities, kids' future. That third column was the only one that mattered. Everything else was just keeping us alive long enough to see it through. I never bought new clothes unless something was literally falling apart. Drove the same beat-up Ford pickup for 15 years, held together with duct tape and prayers. Never took a vacation, never went out to eat, never bought myself anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. The only luxury I allowed myself was watching my kids sleep on Sunday mornings, knowing they didn't have to worry about money like I did when I was their age. That was my vacation. That 4-hour window on Sunday mornings when the house was quiet and I could sit in my kitchen chair, drink instant coffee, and just watch them be kids. Safe kids. Kids who went to bed with full stomachs and woke up in a house where the lights stayed on and the heat worked. People don't understand what real tired feels like. It's not just being sleepy. It's when your bones ache, when your eyes burn, when you catch yourself falling asleep at red lights and have to slap yourself awake because you've still got 6 hours of cab driving ahead of you. It's when you're so exhausted that you forget what day it is, but you never, ever forget why you're doing it. I was building something. Not just paying bills. Any deadbeat can pay bills. I was building a foundation so solid that my kids could build whatever life they wanted on top of it. No student loans, no debt. Clean slate to start with. That was the plan. And for 30 years, it worked exactly like I hoped it would. Sarah graduated from State with a degree in elementary education, debt-free. Michael got through law school without owing a penny to anyone. When Sarah got married, I wrote a check for $12,000 so she could have the wedding she dreamed about. When Michael needed first and last month's rent for his apartment in Chicago, I had the money ready. You want to know what those numbers look like? Let me break it down for you because I remember every dollar. Sarah's college tuition, room and board for 4 years, $47,300. Books, supplies, gas money to visit home, another $8,200. Michael's undergraduate degree, $52,800. Law school, $80,600. Bar exam prep course, $3,400. Sarah's wedding, $12,000. Michael's apartment deposit and moving expenses, $4,500. Total, $217,800. $217,800. I know because I kept track of every penny in that notebook. Every cab fare, every overtime hour, every dollar I scraped together went toward that number. But you know what the real cost was? It wasn't just the money. The real cost was missing Sarah's school plays because I was working the evening shift. It was falling asleep at Michael's baseball games because I'd been up since dawn mixing concrete. It was Sarah learning to make her own breakfast at 7 years old because Daddy was already gone to work. It was Michael walking himself to school because the morning cab shift started at 6. The real cost was being too tired to help with homework, too busy to take them to the movies, too broke to buy them the name-brand shoes their friends had. The real cost was becoming a stranger in my own house, a ghost who left money on the kitchen counter and disappeared before anyone woke up. But I told myself it was temporary. I told myself that once they were established, once they were successful, we'd have time. We'd have the conversations we never had. We'd take the trips we never took. We'd be a real family instead of just people who shared an address. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I was especially wrong about that. Success looks different when you're watching it from the outside. When Sarah got her teaching job in Portland, 3,000 miles away, she called me crying with joy. Dad, it's everything I dreamed of. The salary, the district, the opportunities for advancement. You should be so proud. I was proud. But I was also sitting alone in my kitchen at 65 years old, my back screaming from 3 decades of heavy lifting, realizing that my daughter's dream job was taking her as far away from me as she could get while still being in the same country. Michael passed the bar on his first try, got hired at a big firm in Chicago, making more money in his first year than I made in my best 3 years combined. Dad, you did it, he said when he called to tell me. Everything you worked for, I'm living it. He was right. I had done it. I'd given them everything I promised I would. Clean slates, good educations, bright futures, the American dream, handed to them on a silver platter paid for with my blood, sweat, and tears. But somewhere in all that giving, I forgot to ask myself a very important question. What happens to me when the giving is done? The phone calls got shorter as they got busier. How's work, Dad? Became, how's everything? Became, I'll call you later, Dad. I'm swamped. Sarah sent Christmas cards with pictures of her and her husband at fancy restaurants I couldn't afford. Michael posted photos on Facebook of vacations to places I'd only seen in magazines. They were living the lives I'd built for them. Beautiful, successful, worry-free lives. And I was still sitting in that same kitchen, still driving that same beat-up truck, still wearing the same work clothes, but now I was doing it alone. The construction work got harder as I got older. My knees started giving out around 62. My shoulders couldn't lift what they used to. The younger guys on the crew were polite about it, but I could see it in their eyes. Old Man Nell was slowing down. Old Man Nell couldn't keep up anymore. I had to give up the cab driving at 64. Reflexes weren't what they used to be, and the late nights were killing me worse than they had when I was younger. For the first time in 30 years, I was down to one job, one paycheck. The notebook calculations got harder to balance. But it was okay, I told myself. I'd done what I set out to do. My kids were established. They were successful. They didn't need me to kill myself anymore, except they didn't seem to need me for anything else either. Sarah called once a week, usually on Sunday afternoons. "How are you feeling, Dad? Getting enough rest? You should probably think about retiring soon." Michael texted more than he called. Quick check-ins. "All good here. Hope you're doing well. Talk soon." I started to understand something that no parent wants to admit. You can love your children so much that you disappear completely. You can give so much of yourself away that there's nothing left for them to love back. I became the man who had provided for them, not the man they wanted to spend time with. I was their benefactor, not their father. And benefactors, once their job is done, become just a name on old bank statements. The loneliness was worse than the physical pain. At least when my back was killing me or my hands were cramping up, I knew it was for something. The loneliness wasn't for anything. It was just empty space where a family used to be. February 14th, 2024. Valentine's Day. I remember because I'd been thinking about calling Sarah, maybe Michael, just to hear their voices. 67 years old and spending Valentine's Day alone seemed like the kind of thing that deserved a conversation with the people you love most. I was reaching for my toolbox that morning. Had a small job lined up, fixing some shelves for my neighbor Mrs. Patterson. Nothing big, just a few hours of work to keep my hands busy and put a couple dollars in my pocket. The toolbox was right where I'd left it the night before, next to the kitchen table. 1 second, I was Nelson Rodriguez, veteran construction worker, still strong enough to handle my own business. The next second, I was on my kitchen floor, left side of my body not responding to anything my brain was trying to tell it, words coming out of my mouth like alphabet soup. The stroke didn't hurt the way you'd think it would. It was more like parts of me just stopped working, like someone had unplugged half my body from the wall. My left arm wasn't my arm anymore. My left leg was just dead weight. When I tried to call for help, the words that came out weren't the words I meant to say. Mrs. Patterson found me 3 hours later when she came looking for me about the shelves. Good thing I'd given her a key years ago for emergencies. She took one look at me and called 911. I remember the paramedic, young guy, probably not much older than Michael, kneeling down next to me and saying, "Sir, you've had a stroke. We're going to take care of you." A stroke. Like it was just another Tuesday for him. Like it was the most normal thing in the world. 3 days in intensive care at Metro General. Tubes everywhere, machines beeping, nurses checking on me every hour. I couldn't talk right for the first day and a half. Couldn't write with my right hand because my left brain wasn't cooperating. Couldn't even press the call button when I needed something. But you know what I could do? I could think. I could lie there in that hospital bed, listening to the machines keep me alive, and think about who was going to show up. Who was going to care that Old Man Nell had finally hit the wall? Sarah flew in from Portland. Took her 2 days to arrange things with work, but she came. Michael drove down from Chicago the same day I was admitted. They stood by my bed looking worried, making phone calls to doctors, insurance companies, the social worker who wanted to discuss long-term care options. They were handling things, taking care of business, being responsible adults dealing with a family crisis. I was grateful for that, I was. But lying there watching them manage my medical situation like it was a work project, I realized something that scared me more than the stroke itself. They were good at handling my emergency, but they weren't good at handling me. Michael talked to the doctors about my prognosis, about rehabilitation timelines, about what kind of recovery I could expect. Sarah dealt with the insurance company, made sure my bills would be covered, arranged for someone to check on my house while I was in the hospital. But neither one of them sat down and asked me how I was feeling. Neither one of them held my hand and told me everything was going to be okay. Neither one of them looked me in the eye and said, "Dad, we're scared too." They treated me like a problem to be solved, not like their father who was scared and confused and lying in a hospital bed wondering if this was how it all ended. The doctors said I was lucky. "Could have been much worse, Mr. Rodriguez. You should make a good recovery with proper rehabilitation and physical therapy. You'll need help for a while, assistance with daily activities, but there's no reason you can't regain most of your function." Daily activities. That's what they called it when they meant I couldn't button my own shirts or cut my own food or remember which pills to take when. Daily activities made it sound so simple, so manageable. Sarah and Michael nodded along with everything the doctors said, asked good questions, took notes, made lists. They were prepared, organized, on top of things. They were also planning my life without asking me what I wanted. "We've been looking into places, Dad," Sarah said on day 3. She was sitting in the chair next to my bed, holding a folder full of brochures. "Rehabilitation centers that can help you get your strength back. Some of them are really nice, like resorts, almost." Michael was standing by the window looking at his phone. Always looking at his phone. "There's one about 20 minutes from your house. Good reviews online. They specialize in stroke recovery." I could talk better by then. Words were coming out right most of the time. So I said what I'd been thinking since I woke up in that hospital bed. I was thinking maybe I could stay with one of you, just until I get my strength back. The silence in that room was louder than all the machines I'd been hooked up to. Sarah looked at Michael. Michael looked at Sarah. Neither one of them looked at me. "Dad," Sarah said finally, "we need to be realistic about what you're going to need. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, someone to help with medications, meals, getting around." "I can learn all that," I said. "I can get stronger. I just need somewhere to do it. Somewhere that feels like home." Michael put his phone away. Came over to stand next to Sarah's chair. They looked like a committee about to deliver bad news. "Dad, you're too much work." Sarah said it. My little girl who used to climb into my lap when I got home from my second job, still smelling like sawdust and taxi vinyl. My daughter, who I carried to bed every night for the first 8 years of her life, who I read stories to even when I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open. "You're too much work." 4 words that changed everything. 4 words that took 30 years of sacrifice and threw them in the garbage. 4 words that turned me from being their father into being their burden. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I didn't. I just nodded and said, "Okay, find me a good place." They found me Sunset Manor. Clean facility, good staff, decent food, everything you'd want in a place where you go to be forgotten by the people you love most. That was 6 weeks ago. I've gotten stronger since then. I can walk with a cane now. My speech is back to normal. I can button my own shirts and cut my own food. I've learned to swallow the pills that keep my blood pressure stable and my brain from stroking out again. I've gotten better at a lot of things. But I haven't gotten better at understanding how the people I sacrificed everything for could look at me and see nothing but work. Too much work. That's what 30 years of love looks like when it comes back to you. 6 weeks at Sunset Manor teaches you things they don't put in the rehabilitation brochures. It teaches you that visiting hours mean nothing when nobody's coming to visit. It teaches you that family involvement in recovery is just something they write in your chart when the social worker asks if anyone's called. Most of all, it teaches you how to become invisible while you're still breathing. Sarah calls twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays, usually around lunchtime her time, which means I'm sitting in the common room watching The Price is Right when my phone buzzes. Same conversation every time, like she's reading from a script. "Hi, Dad. how are you feeling today? Getting stronger, I tell her because that's what she wants to hear. That's great. Are you doing your physical therapy exercises? Every day. Good, good. How's the food there? It's fine. Well, I just wanted to check in. I love you, Dad. Take care of yourself. Love you too, sweetheart. Click. 5 minutes. Maybe 6 if there's a particularly long pause while she's checking her email or dealing with something more important than her father's recovery. I time these calls now. Not because I'm bitter. Okay, maybe I am a little bitter, but because I want to see if they'll ever get longer, if we'll ever move past the checklist of questions to something that feels like an actual conversation. So far, the longest call was 8 minutes, and that was only because she accidentally put me on hold while answering her door for a delivery. Michael texts more than he calls, quick messages that feel like he's sending them from the bathroom at work. How are you today, Dad? Hope PT is going well. Thinking of you. I've started screenshotting them because they're all so similar I sometimes can't tell if he's sending me the same message twice. Last Tuesday, his text was, "Hope you're feeling good today." I texted back, "I am. Would love to talk to you soon." No response for 3 days. Then, out of nowhere, "That's great, Dad. Take care." Take care? Like I'm a co-worker he barely knows instead of the man who worked himself into the ground so he could become a lawyer. The other residents here have their own stories, and if you sit in the common room long enough you'll hear all of them. Mrs. Chen's daughter visits every Sunday without fail, brings her grandchildren, stays for hours. Mr. Washington's son calls him every morning at exactly 8 a.m. to make sure he took his pills. Miss Rodriguez, no relation, different Rodriguez family gets so many visitors on weekends that they have to bring in extra chairs. Then there's me, Old Man Nell, whose kids call twice a week to check boxes on their good children list. The physical therapist, Janet, is probably the person I talk to most these days. She's maybe 45, has pictures of her teenagers all over her office, and she doesn't treat me like I'm made of glass. During our sessions, she actually asks questions like she cares about the answers. "You seem stronger than when you first got here," she said last week while I was working on my balance exercises. "But you also seem sadder." I almost told her everything right then. Almost explained about the 30 years of 3 jobs, about Sarah calling me too much work, about Michael texting me like I'm a distant relative he feels obligated to check on. But Janet's got other patients, other problems to solve. She doesn't need to hear about an old man feeling sorry for himself. "Just adjusting to all this," I said instead. "Your family doesn't visit much, do they?" That's the thing about physical therapists. They notice everything. They see which patients light up when someone walks through the door, and which ones never look toward the entrance at all. "They're busy," I said. "Successful careers. Lives of their own." Janet nodded, but she had that look. The same look the nurses get when they're being polite about something that isn't really okay. "Success is good," she said, "but not if it costs you the people who helped you get there." I've been thinking about that conversation every day since. Not if it costs you the people who helped you get there. Janet doesn't know about the 3 jobs, doesn't know about the notebook full of calculations, doesn't know about the 30 years I spent building their lives. But somehow she understood what Sarah and Michael don't seem to get. They didn't just succeed in spite of me. They succeeded because of me. And now that success has made them too busy to care about the man who made it possible. The worst part isn't the loneliness, though. The worst part is starting to believe maybe they're right. Maybe I am too much work. Maybe asking your children to help you when you're down and scared and trying to get your strength back is asking too much. Maybe 30 years of sacrifice doesn't actually entitle you to anything. I catch myself in the mirror sometimes, shuffling down the hallway with my cane, wearing the same 3 shirts in rotation because nobody thought to bring me more clothes from home. I look like what I am. An old man whose best days are behind him, whose usefulness has run out. Is that what Sarah sees when she looks at me now? Not her father who worked himself to death so she could have everything she wanted, but just another old guy who needs help getting dressed and remembering to take his pills? Maybe too much work is exactly what I am. The social worker here, Ms. Peterson, keeps asking about discharge planning. Where am I going to go when I'm strong enough to leave? Do I have family support? Can I manage on my own? I tell her I'm working on it, that my children and I are discussing options. But the truth is, we're not discussing anything. Sarah sent me a brochure for assisted living communities. Michael forwarded me an article about seniors who age in place with home health aides. Neither one of them has said, "Dad, come stay with us until you figure out what's next." Neither one of them has said, "Dad, you're not a burden." Neither one of them has said, "Dad, after everything you did for us, of course we'll take care of you now." They're giving me options instead of giving me a home. They're solving my problem instead of solving it together. And maybe that's what I taught them. Maybe by working all those years, by sacrificing everything, by making myself into nothing but a provider, I taught them that love is transactional. You give until you have nothing left to give, and then you get out of the way so the people you gave everything to can enjoy what you built for them. Maybe I raised them to be exactly who they are: successful, independent people who don't know how to need anyone, and who definitely don't know how to be needed. But here's what I'm starting to understand. Sitting here in this rehabilitation center, getting stronger every day while getting lonelier every day. I didn't just give them everything I had, I gave them everything I was. And now they don't know who I am when I'm not giving them something. It was Marcus Washington who gave me the idea, though he probably doesn't know it. Marcus is 72, been here since January after his hip replacement surgery went sideways. His grandson, kids maybe 16, 17, visits him every Thursday after school. Smart kid, always on his phone but not in a rude way. He uses it to show his grandfather videos, pictures, things happening in the world. Last Thursday, I was sitting in the common room when I heard Marcus laughing harder than I'd heard anyone laugh since I got here. His grandson was showing him something on his phone, some video of a cat that had figured out how to open doors, I think. But what struck me wasn't the cat. It was watching Marcus's face light up like he was 20 years younger. "Grandpa, you should make your own videos," the kid said. "Tell people about the old days, when you worked at the steel mill. People love that stuff now." "Who's going to want to hear about an old man's work stories?" Marcus asked. "Everyone, Grandpa. Trust me. There's this whole thing now where people share their life stories online. Goes viral all the time." Viral? I'd heard that word before, but never really understood what it meant. The kid tried to explain it. Something about videos spreading across the internet. Millions of people watching, sharing with their friends. Like a chain reaction, but with stories instead of explosions. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. What would happen if I told my story? Not to Sarah and Michael, they already know it and don't seem to care, but to strangers. To people who might understand what 30 years of sacrifice looks like, what it feels like to be called too much work by the people you gave everything to. I asked the night nurse, Patricia, if she could help me figure out how to make a video on my phone. She's younger than my kids, probably grew up with this technology, and she didn't ask too many questions about why I wanted to learn. Just showed me how to open the camera app, how to flip it around so I could see myself on the screen, how to press record. "You making videos for your family?" she asked. "Something like that," I said. It took me 6 tries to get it right. The first attempt, I couldn't figure out how to look at the camera instead of the screen. Spent 3 minutes talking to my own forehead. The second try, a maintenance worker started vacuuming in the hallway and you couldn't hear anything I was saying. Third try, I got emotional talking about Sarah's stick figure drawings and had to stop. Fourth try, I sounded like I was reading from a grocery list. Fifth try, I forgot what I wanted to say halfway through and just sat there staring at the phone for 2 minutes. But the 6th time, something clicked. Maybe it was because it was late, after midnight, and the hallway was quiet. Maybe it was because I was tired of holding all of this inside. Maybe it was because I finally had something to say that felt bigger than just complaining about my ungrateful children. I looked into that camera lens and I told the truth. My name is Nelson Rodriguez, but everyone calls me Old Man Nell. I'm 67 years old, and I want to tell you what happens when you sacrifice everything for your children and they decide you're too much work. Once I started talking, the words came easier than they had in months. I talked about the 3 jobs, about the notebook full of calculations, about 30 years of 4-hour nights so Sarah and Michael could have 4-year degrees. I talked about missing school plays and baseball games and bedtime stories because I was working to pay for their futures. I talked about the stroke, about lying in that hospital bed thinking my children would finally need me the way I'd always needed to provide for them. I talked about asking to stay with one of them during my recovery, about the look that passed between them before Sarah said those 4 words that changed everything. "You're too much work." I held up my hands to the camera, these shaking, scarred, calloused hands that built their lives from nothing. "I built your dreams with these hands," I said. "I worked construction by day, drove taxi by night, slept 4 hours for 30 years so you could sleep easy for the rest of your lives. I never asked you for anything, never asked you to pay me back, never asked you to take care of me, never asked you to sacrifice anything for me the way I sacrificed everything for you." My voice cracked a little when I got to the part about the rehabilitation center, about the twice-weekly phone calls and the text messages that feel like obligations, about learning to be invisible while still breathing. All I asked for was one room in one of the houses I helped you buy, for a few months while I got my strength back, and you couldn't give me that. You looked at your father, the man who gave up his entire life so you could have yours, and you saw work instead of love. I don't remember everything I said in that video. I was talking for maybe 15, 20 minutes, just letting it all pour out. But I remember how it ended. If you're watching this and you have parents who sacrificed for you, call them. Don't text them. Call them. Go see them. Ask them how they're doing and actually listen to the answer, because someday they're going to need you. And when that day comes, they won't be asking for your money or your success or any of the things they gave you. They'll just be asking for you. I sat there for a minute after I stopped recording, staring at my phone, wondering what the hell I was planning to do with this video. It felt good to say it all out loud. But now what? Send it to Sarah and Michael? They already know how I feel, and they've already made their choice. Then I remembered what Marcus's grandson had said about people sharing their stories online, about videos going viral, reaching strangers who might care more than your own family does. I'd never used social media before, never seen the point. But Patricia had mentioned something called Facebook, said most people my age who are online use it to keep in touch with family and friends. She helped me set up an account the next day, though I didn't tell her what I was planning to do with it. It took me 2 days to work up the courage to post the video, 2 days of staring at it on my phone, wondering if I was being a bitter old man or if I was finally standing up for myself. 2 days of thinking about Sarah and Michael living their successful lives while I learned to walk with a cane in a place that smells like disinfectant and sadness. Finally, on a Thursday night when the loneliness felt heavier than usual, I posted it. I didn't know what to expect. Maybe a few likes from other residents' families who might see it. Maybe some sympathetic comments from people who understood what it felt like to be forgotten by the people you love most. I went to sleep that night thinking maybe 3 people would watch it. I woke up the next morning to 847 notifications on my phone. The phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Every few seconds, another notification. Comments, shares, reactions. Numbers I didn't understand climbing higher every time I looked at the screen. Patricia found me in the common room at 7 a.m., still in my pajamas, staring at my phone like it had grown legs, and started talking to me. "Mr. Rodriguez, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I think I broke the internet," I said, which is probably the stupidest thing a 67-year-old man has ever said, but I didn't know how else to explain what was happening. She sat down next to me and I showed her the numbers. 8,000 views. 12,000. 15,000. The numbers kept changing faster than I could read them. "What did you post?" she asked. I showed her the video, watched her face change as she listened to me talk about the 3 jobs, about Sarah calling me too much work, about learning to be invisible in a place full of people who still had families that cared about them. When it was over, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Mr. Rodriguez, this is going to get big. Really big. Are you ready for that?" I wasn't ready for anything. I wasn't ready for the comments that started pouring in from people all over the country. All over the world, apparently. People telling their own stories about parents who sacrificed everything and children who forgot where their success came from. This broke my heart. My father worked 2 jobs for 20 years, and I never thanked him properly before he passed. Those kids should be ashamed of themselves, after everything you did for them. Sir, you're not too much work. You're a hero. Someone needs to find this man's children and show them this video. That last comment scared me more than the rest. I hadn't thought about Sarah and Michael seeing this. I'd been so focused on telling strangers my story that I forgot my children might eventually become strangers watching it. By noon, the video had 50,000 views. By dinner time, it was over 100,000. Patricia helped me understand what was happening. People were sharing it on something called TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, platforms I'd never heard of but that apparently connected more people than I knew existed. "Mr. Rodriguez," Patricia said, "you need to call your children. They're going to see this whether you tell them about it or not, and it's going to be better if it comes from you." But I couldn't bring myself to make those calls. What was I going to say? "Hey, Sarah, remember when you called me too much work? Well, now 100,000 strangers agree that you're a terrible daughter." The comments kept coming. Some of them made me cry. People sharing stories about their own parents, about regrets they carried, about phone calls they wished they'd made before it was too late. But others made me uncomfortable. People saying cruel things about Sarah and Michael, calling them names, making assumptions about who they were based on a 20-minute video from their hurt father. That wasn't what I wanted. I didn't post the video to destroy my children or to turn strangers against them. I posted it because I was lonely and angry, and I needed someone, somewhere, to understand what 30 years of sacrifice looked like when it got thrown back in your face. But the internet doesn't care what you intended. The internet takes your pain and turns it into content. And content doesn't care about nuance or complicated family relationships, or the possibility that maybe everyone involved made mistakes. By the second day, news websites were picking up the story. Elderly man's heartbreaking video about ungrateful children goes viral. Father who worked 3 jobs gets abandoned by kids he put through college. This dad's message will make you call your parents right now. They were using my pain to get clicks, turning my family's private breakdown into public entertainment. I started getting friend requests from reporters, messages from talk show producers, emails from people who wanted to interview me about modern family dynamics and the ingratitude of millennials. I didn't want to be the poster child for abandoned parents. I just wanted my kids to understand how much it hurt to be called too much work after 30 years of being everything they needed. Marcus's grandson visited that Thursday like always, and he recognized me from the video immediately. "Mr. Rodriguez, dude, you're famous. My friends at school have all seen your video. It's everywhere." Famous. I'd never wanted to be famous. I'd wanted to be invisible for 30 years so my children could shine, and now that they didn't want me around, I was suddenly the most visible person in America. "Is this good or bad?" I asked Marcus later after his grandson left. Marcus thought about it for a minute. "Depends on what you want to happen next," he said. "You got their attention. Question is, what are you going to do with it?" I didn't know what I wanted to happen next. I just knew that every time I looked at my phone, the numbers got bigger. Every time someone shared my story, it moved further away from being about me and my children and closer to being about something else entirely. Something bigger and more complicated than one old man who felt forgotten by the people he loved most. The video hit 1 million views on day 3. Patricia showed me articles about it, think pieces about elder care and family responsibility, and the American dream gone wrong. Everyone had an opinion about me, about Sarah and Michael, about what this story meant for society. but nobody was asking the only question that mattered to me. How do you fix a family that's been broken by too much love given and too little love returned? That night, my phone rang. Not a buzz from social media, not another notification. An actual phone call. Michael's name on the screen. My hands were shaking worse than they had since the stroke as I answered. "Dad," he said, and his voice sounded different, smaller. "We need to talk." I almost didn't answer. 37 days at Sunset Manor, and Michael calls me exactly when the whole world is watching. Part of me wanted to let it go to voicemail, wanted to see if he'd leave a message that sounded like he actually cared about me instead of just cared about damage control. But I answered, because even after everything, even after too much work, and the twice-weekly check-ins and the text messages that felt like obligations, he was still my son. Still, the little boy I used to carry to bed after falling asleep in front of the TV. Still the kid whose law school graduation made me cry harder than I'd cried since his mother died. "Hello, Michael." "Dad." Long pause. I could hear him breathing, could hear what sounded like traffic in the background. "I saw the video." "I figured you might." "A million people have seen it, Dad. It's all over the news. People are saying things about us, about Sarah and me." There it was. He wasn't calling because he was worried about me, or because he wanted to apologize for calling me too much work, or because he realized that maybe his father deserved better than twice-weekly phone calls and text messages that felt like afterthoughts. He was calling because strangers on the internet were making him look bad. "What kind of things?" I asked, though I already knew. I'd seen the comments. People calling my children ungrateful, selfish, heartless. People sharing stories about their own parents and making Sarah and Michael into villains in someone else's morality tale. "Dad, you made us sound like monsters, like we just abandoned you and don't care what happens to you." Did I say anything that wasn't true? Another long pause. "No, but it's not the whole story." "Then tell me the whole story, Michael. Because from where I'm sitting, the story is pretty simple. I worked myself into the ground for 30 years so you and Sarah could have everything you wanted. When I needed help for a few months, you decided I was too much work. Now I'm getting stronger in a place that smells like cleaning supplies and sadness while you live in the house I helped you buy. That's not... Dad, it's more complicated than that." "How is it complicated? Either you wanted to help your father when he was down, or you didn't. Either 30 years of sacrifice earned me a place at your table, or it didn't. Which part is complicated?" I could hear him sighing, could picture him rubbing his forehead the way he used to do when he was stressed about exams or job interviews. But I wasn't going to make this easy for him. Not anymore. "We were scared, Dad. When we saw you in that hospital bed, when the doctor said you'd need help with things, we panicked. Sarah's got her hands full with work, and I'm pulling 60-hour weeks at the firm. We didn't know how to... We thought the rehab center would be better for you. Professional care, physical therapy, people who knew how to help someone recover from a stroke. You thought wrong. I can see that now. But Dad, posting that video, do you know what this is doing to us? Sarah's been crying for 2 days. People are calling our jobs. Our friends are asking questions. Someone found Sarah's address and sent her a letter calling her a disgrace. And there it was, the real reason for the call. Not because they missed me. Not because they realized they'd made a mistake. Not because they wanted to make things right. Because their reputations were getting damaged by their decision to abandon their father. "Michael," I said, "I didn't make that video to hurt you and Sarah." "Then why did you make it?" Good question. Why had I made it? Because I was lonely? Because I was angry? Because I needed someone, somewhere, to understand what it felt like to give everything you had and get nothing back but a spot in a rehabilitation center and phone calls that felt like items being checked off a to-do list? "I made it because I was tired of being invisible," I said. I was tired of pretending that twice-weekly phone calls and text messages were enough. I was tired of acting like it was okay that my children decided I was too much work after I spent 30 years being whatever kind of work they needed me to be. "Dad, We never said you were invisible. We never stopped caring about you. When's the last time you asked me how I was feeling and actually listened to the answer? When's the last time you visited me just because you wanted to see me, not because you felt obligated to check on my medical condition? When's the last time either of you treated me like I was your father instead of just another problem you needed to manage? Silence. Long, heavy silence that told me everything I needed to know. That's what I thought, I said. Dad, we want to fix this. We want to make it right. Do you? Or do you want the video to go away so people stop calling you terrible children? Both, he said, and I had to give him credit for honesty. We want to fix our relationship with you, and we want our lives back. Those might be the same thing, Michael, or they might not be. Depends on whether you're trying to fix what's broken between us or just trying to fix your public image. How do we fix what's broken? I'd been asking myself that question for 6 weeks. How do you rebuild a relationship with people who see you as a burden? How do you trust children who decided that 30 years of sacrifice wasn't worth a few months of inconvenience? How do you forgive being called too much work by the people you worked yourself to death for? I don't know if you can, Michael. I don't know if I want you to. What does that mean? It means maybe some things can't be fixed. Maybe when you decide your father is too much work, that decision changes everything. Maybe viral videos and public shame aren't enough to undo what you did to us. Dad, please. We made a mistake. A big mistake. But we're family. We can work through this. Family. He said it like it meant something. Like it was supposed to solve everything. Like being family was enough to erase the moment when they looked at me in that hospital room and decided I wasn't worth the trouble. We'll see, Michael. We'll see. What can we do? Tell me what we can do to make this right. That was the question, wasn't it? What could they do? The damage was done. The words were said. The choice was made. You can't unsay too much work. You can't undo the moment when your children decide you're not worth their inconvenience. But maybe, if they were willing to do the work, the real work, not just the public relations work, maybe something could be salvaged. Maybe not the relationship we used to have, because that was built on me giving everything and them taking it for granted, but maybe something new, something more honest, something where I wasn't invisible, and they weren't just successful people who happened to share my DNA. I'll think about it, I told him. But Michael, the next time you call me, make sure it's because you miss me, not because you're worried about what people are saying about you online. I hung up before he could respond. My phone buzzed immediately. A text message. Dad, I do miss you. I should have said that first. I stared at that message for a long time. Maybe it was true. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was both. Maybe that's where we'd have to start. 3 days after Michael's call, Sarah posted her own video. I found out about it the same way I found out everything else these days. From Patricia, who'd become my unofficial social media translator. She knocked on my door at 8 in the morning, holding her phone with that careful expression she got when she had to deliver news that might hurt. Mr. Rodriguez, you should probably see this before anyone else tells you about it. Sarah was sitting in what looked like her kitchen, the same kitchen I'd helped her pick out appliances for when she bought her house in Portland. She was wearing a blue sweater I didn't recognize. Probably cost more than I used to make in a week driving cab, and she looked like she'd been crying. My name is Sarah Martinez, she said, looking directly into the camera. And I'm the daughter in Nelson Rodriguez's video, the one who called her father too much work. My chest tightened. Whatever was coming next, I wasn't ready for it. I've been getting messages for 4 days now, some of them from people sharing their own stories about their parents, which I'm grateful for, but others calling me names I won't repeat, telling me I'm a disgrace, that I don't deserve the life my father built for me. She paused, wiped her eyes with a tissue that was already crumpled. And maybe they're right. Maybe I don't deserve it. I had to stop the video, sat there staring at my phone screen, at my daughter's face frozen mid-sentence, and tried to figure out what I was feeling. Vindicated? Guilty? Angry that it took public shame to make her admit she'd been wrong? All of the above, maybe. Patricia was still standing in my doorway. "Do you want me to leave you alone to watch this?" I nodded, closed the door, sat back down on my bed, and pressed play. "My father worked 3 jobs for 30 years, Sarah continued. "I knew that. I lived it. I remember falling asleep to the sound of his truck pulling out of the driveway at 4 in the morning. I remember him coming to my school events still covered in sawdust because he came straight from work. I remember birthday dinners where he'd fall asleep at the table because he'd been up since dawn and wouldn't get home until after midnight." She was crying now, not trying to hide it. "I also remember taking all of that for granted. I remember being embarrassed sometimes when my friends' dads showed up in suits and my dad showed up in work boots. I remember thinking it was normal, what he was doing. Like all fathers work themselves to death for their children." The camera shook a little. She was holding the phone in her hands, not propping it up like I had. "When Dad had his stroke, we were scared. Michael and we were terrified. We'd never seen him weak before, never seen him need help with anything. Our father was the man who fixed everything, who provided everything, who never asked for anything back. And suddenly he couldn't button his own shirt." She stopped talking for almost 30 seconds. I could hear her breathing, could see her trying to collect herself. "We told ourselves we were doing the right thing, finding him professional care. We told ourselves the rehab center would be better for him than staying with one of us. We had reasons, good reasons. Sarah's job, Michael's hours at the firm, the fact that neither of us knew how to take care of someone recovering from a stroke." More crying, the kind of crying that comes from someplace deep and painful. "But the truth is, we were selfish. We were scared, and we were selfish, and we took the easy way out. We paid for professional care instead of giving him what he actually needed, which was his family, which was us." I had to pause the video again, 37 years old, and my daughter was finally understanding something I'd tried to teach her by example her whole life. Sometimes love isn't convenient. Sometimes family means doing things that are hard and messy and inconvenient, because the people you love are worth the inconvenience. "I called my father too much work," she said when I started the video again. "I looked at the man who worked himself into the ground so I could have everything I wanted, and I decided he was too much work. I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for that." The video was almost 10 minutes long. She talked about feeling guilty every time she called me, knowing she was just checking boxes instead of actually connecting. She talked about seeing my video and realizing that while she'd been building the life I made possible for her, she'd forgotten about the man who made it possible. She talked about the comments and messages, about people sharing their own stories of parents who'd sacrificed everything and children who'd forgotten to be grateful. She talked about regret and shame, and the awful realization that success doesn't mean anything if it costs you the people who helped you achieve it. And then, at the end, she said something that broke what was left of my heart. "I don't know if my father will ever forgive me. I don't know if our relationship can be fixed, but I want him to know that I remember now. I remember the man who carried me to bed when I fell asleep on the couch. I remember the father who never missed a school play, even when he was exhausted. I remember the dad who kept every drawing I ever made in his toolbox." She held up a piece of paper, one of my old drawings, the stick figure with the hard hat. "Daddy working," written in crayon at the bottom. "I kept them too, Dad. I kept them all." The video ended with her looking directly into the camera, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm so sorry." I must have watched that video 15 times that morning. Each time, I noticed something different. The way her voice cracked when she called me Daddy at the end. She hadn't called me that since she was 12. The way she held that old drawing like it was made of gold instead of construction paper and crayons. The way she looked into the camera like she was looking directly at me. But mostly, I noticed how much she sounded like me when I was her age. Trying so hard to do the right thing, to be a good person, but not always knowing what that meant or how to get there. Michael posted his video that same day. Similar message, different approach. More lawyer-like, more structured, but no less heartfelt. He talked about growing up thinking his father was invincible, about taking for granted all the sacrifices I made, about the phone call we'd had, and realizing he'd been treating me like a client instead of his dad. Both videos went viral too. Not as big as mine, but big enough. Suddenly, instead of one story about an abandoned father, the internet had a 3-part family drama. People were picking sides, analyzing our family dynamic like it was a TV show, offering advice and opinions and judgments about people they'd never met. Some comments were supportive of Sarah and Michael. At least they're owning their mistakes. It takes courage to admit you were wrong so publicly. This is what accountability looks like. Others weren't buying it. Too little, too late. Only apologizing because they got caught. Where were these tears before the video went viral? I didn't know which group was right. Maybe both, maybe neither. What I did know was that my children had just exposed their pain and shame to millions of strangers because of a video I'd made in a moment of loneliness and anger. They were getting death threats and hate mail because their father had told the world they'd hurt him. That wasn't justice. That wasn't what I'd wanted. Or maybe it was, and I just didn't like how it felt when I got it. Patricia found me in the common room that afternoon, scrolling through comments on Sarah's video trying to figure out how to feel about any of this. "How are you doing with all this?" she asked, sitting down next to me. "I don't know," I said. "I wanted them to understand how much they hurt me. I wanted them to realize what they'd done, but I didn't want them to get attacked by strangers on the internet." "You can't control how people respond to your story once you put it out there," Patricia said, "but you can control what happens next." "What do you mean?" "Your children made public apologies. They admitted they were wrong, that they hurt you, that they want to make things right. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Good question. What was I going to do about it? I could stay angry, keep them at arm's length, let them suffer the consequences of their choices. I could milk this viral fame for everything it was worth, do interviews and write a book and become the poster child for neglected elderly parents. Or I could try to figure out if there was a way forward. If there was something worth salvaging from 37 years of being their father and 6 weeks of feeling like they wished I'd just disappear. The problem was, I didn't know if I trusted their apologies. Were they sorry because they realized they'd hurt me? Or were they sorry because the whole world was watching them hurt me? Did it matter? My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Dad, I know you probably need time to process everything, but I want you to know that video wasn't for everyone else. It was for you. I needed you to hear me say I was sorry." Then, a few minutes later, another one. "I found your old toolbox in the garage. All my drawings are still in there. I'm looking at them now and remembering how hard you worked to give me a life where I'd never have to worry about money. I forgot to be grateful. I'm sorry, Daddy." Daddy! There it was again. Maybe that was where we'd have to start. Not with the public apologies or the viral videos or the millions of strangers weighing in on our family. Maybe we'd have to start with a daughter who remembered that her father kept her crayon drawings in his toolbox for 30 years, and a father who remembered that love sometimes means forgiving people, even when they don't deserve it. Especially when they don't deserve it. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about what they deserved. Maybe it was about what I could live with. Saturday morning, 11:15. I was in the physical therapy room working on my balance exercises when Patricia appeared in the doorway with that look on her face. The one that meant something was happening. Something I might not be ready for. "Mr. Rodriguez, you have visitors." Visitors. Plural. My heart started doing things it hadn't done since before the stroke. "Who?" "Your children, both of them. They're in the family meeting room." I almost said no. Almost told Patricia to send them away, that I wasn't ready, that I needed more time to figure out what I wanted to say to them. But then I realized something. I'd been waiting 6 weeks for them to show up. Not call, not text, not send flowers or cards or fruit baskets. Show up. And here they were. "Give me 5 minutes," I said. "Tell them I'll be right there." I looked at myself in the mirror by the therapy equipment. Gray stubble because I'd been too distracted to shave properly. The same shirt I'd been wearing for 2 days because doing laundry felt like too much effort. Hair sticking up on one side because I'd been lying on my bed watching their videos over and over. This wasn't how I'd pictured our reunion. In my head, when I'd imagined them coming to see me, I was strong and dignified and completely in control. I was going to make them work for forgiveness, make them prove they deserved another chance. Instead, I looked like exactly what I was, a lonely old man who'd been abandoned by his children and was trying to figure out if their apologies meant anything. The family meeting room was at the end of the hallway, past the nurses' station and the common area where Mr. Washington was watching his morning game shows. I walked slowly, using my cane more for emotional support than physical support, trying to prepare myself for whatever was waiting on the other side of that door. They were sitting at the small round table, not talking, both looking at their phones. Classic Sarah and Michael behavior. When things got uncomfortable, disappear into your device. But when I opened the door, they both looked up immediately, and I saw something I hadn't seen in their faces in years. Fear. They were scared of me. Scared of what I might say, how I might react, whether I'd give them the chance they were hoping for. Good. Maybe fear was where we needed to start. "Dad," Sarah said, standing up. She looked smaller than she had in her video, younger, like the little girl who used to climb into my lap when I got home from work. "Thank you for seeing us." Michael stood too, but he didn't say anything. Just nodded, like he was acknowledging me in a business meeting. I took my time getting settled in the chair across from them, adjusting my cane, making them wait, making them sit with the awkwardness of not knowing where they stood with their father. "So," I said finally, "here you are." "Here we are," Sarah said. Silence. Heavy, uncomfortable silence that stretched out until Michael finally broke it. "Dad, we owe you an apology. A real one, not just the public ones." "Do you?" "Yes, we screwed up, badly. We were scared and selfish, and we took the easy way out instead of taking care of you the way you took care of us our whole lives. That's what you said in your videos." "We meant it," Sarah said. "Every word." I studied their faces, looking for signs that this was just damage control, that they were here because they had to be, not because they wanted to be. But what I saw was 2 middle-aged adults who looked like they hadn't slept well in days, who seemed genuinely ashamed of themselves, who were sitting in a rehabilitation center family meeting room trying to figure out how to apologize to their father for breaking his heart. "Why now?" I asked. "Why come here now, after 6 weeks of phone calls and text messages and pretending everything was fine?" Sarah and Michael looked at each other. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. "Because we watched your video," Sarah said, "and we realized we didn't know you anymore. We knew Dad the provider, Dad the worker, Dad who never asked for anything, but we didn't know Dad the person who was lonely and hurt and feeling abandoned by his children. We turned you into a function instead of a father," Michael added, "and when you couldn't function the way you used to, we didn't know what to do with you." That hit harder than I expected, because it was true. For 30 years, I'd been so focused on providing for them, on being what they needed me to be, that I'd forgotten how to just be with them, and they'd gotten so used to me being their safety net, their problem solver, their ATM machine, that when I needed something from them, they didn't know how to give it. "I watched your videos," I said. "Both of them." "What did you think?" Sarah asked. "I thought you sounded sorry." "We are sorry, Dad. More than sorry. But are you sorry because you hurt me? Or are you sorry because the whole world knows you hurt me?" Another look between them. This time it was Michael who answered. "Both," he said. "And I know that's not what you want to hear, but it's the truth. We're sorry we hurt you, and we're sorry everyone knows we hurt you, and we're sorry we were too stupid and selfish to see what we were doing before it got to this point." I appreciated the honesty. Most people would have lied, would have said it was only about me. only about their father, not about their reputations. But Michael was right. It was both. And maybe that was okay. Maybe being embarrassed into doing the right thing was still doing the right thing. "So, what now?" I asked. "You apologize. I forgive you. We pretend the last 6 weeks didn't happen?" "No," Sarah said. "We want to do better. We want to actually fix this, not just patch it up." "How?" "By starting over. By getting to know each other as the people we are now, not the people we were when I was sending you stick figure drawings and Michael was playing Little League." That made sense. The truth was, I didn't really know who my children had become. I knew Sarah was a teacher, knew Michael was a lawyer, knew they were successful and independent and living the lives I'd made possible for them. But I didn't know what made them happy, what kept them up at night, what they wanted their futures to look like. And they didn't know me as anything other than the man who'd worked 3 jobs and never complained. They didn't know I liked old Western movies, that I'd always wanted to learn to play guitar, that I sometimes sat in my truck for 10 minutes after getting home from work just to listen to the radio and pretend I was someone who didn't have so many responsibilities. "I've been angry with you," I said. "Really angry." "You had every right to be," Sarah said. "I still am angry. But I'm also tired of being angry. I'm tired of being lonely. I'm tired of feeling like the 30 years I spent raising you didn't matter enough for you to want me around when I needed you." "They mattered," Michael said. "They matter. We forgot how to show it." "Then show me now." "How?" I thought about that for a minute. What did I want from them? An apology? I'd gotten that. Public acknowledgement that they'd been wrong? I'd gotten that too. What did I actually need from my children to believe that this was real, that we could build something better than what we'd had? "I want to come home," I said finally. "Home?" Sarah asked. "Not to stay, not permanently. But I want to leave this place and spend some time with my family before I figure out what comes next. I want to have dinner at a table that doesn't have a lunch menu printed on it. I want to sleep in a room that doesn't smell like disinfectant. I want to have a conversation that lasts longer than 5 minutes and doesn't feel like a medical consultation." They were both quiet for a moment. Then Sarah said, "You can stay with us, both of us, as long as you want." "Are you sure? Because last time you offered me a place to stay, you decided I was too much work." Sarah flinched like I'd slapped her. Good. I wanted it to sting. I wanted her to remember that words have consequences, that calling your father too much work isn't something you just get to take back. "We're sure," Michael said, "and if we screw it up again, if we make you feel unwanted or like you're too much trouble, you call us on it. Don't suffer in silence. Don't make another video. Just tell us we're being idiots and give us a chance to do better." "You think it's going to be that easy?" "No," Sarah said. "I think it's going to be hard. I think we're all going to have to learn how to be a family again. But Dad, I want to try. I want to know my father as a person, not just as the man who made my life possible." I looked at these 2 successful, grown-up people who still somehow looked like children asking for forgiveness. Children who'd made a terrible mistake but who seemed genuinely committed to doing better. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all any of us could ask for. The chance to try again, to do better, to figure out how to love each other as the people we'd become instead of the people we used to be. "Okay," I said. "Let's try." I'm writing this from Sarah's kitchen table in Portland. It's been 3 months since I left Sunset Manor, 2 months since I started splitting my time between Sarah's house and Michael's apartment in Chicago. This isn't how I thought my story would end when I made that video, but maybe it's how it needed to end. Not with revenge or dramatic reconciliation or some perfect family reunion where everyone cries and hugs and promises never to hurt each other again, but with the slow, daily work of rebuilding something that got broken by too much giving on one side and too much taking on the other. The first few weeks were awkward as hell. Sarah would hover around me like I was made of glass, asking every 5 minutes if I needed anything, if I was comfortable, if there was something she could get me. Michael did the same thing when I stayed with him, treating me like a fragile houseguest instead of their father. It took me finally losing my temper. I'm not dying, I'm recovering, and if you ask me one more time if I need a pillow, I'm going to throw this cane at your head, before they relaxed enough to start treating me like a person again. We've had some hard conversations these past 3 months, about the 30 years when I was too busy working to really get to know them as people, about how they grew up thinking love meant providing things instead of providing presents, about the way I disappeared into my jobs and they disappeared into their success, and how we all forgot that family is something you have to choose every day, not something you just inherit by accident of birth. Sarah and I talk more now than we have since she was in high school. Real conversations, not just status updates and check-ins. I found out she's been thinking about having kids but wasn't sure she'd be a good mother because she didn't have enough memories of us just spending time together. I told her about how scared I was after her mother died, how I threw myself into work partly because providing for her and Michael felt like the only kind of love I knew how to give. Michael and I are working on it. He's still more comfortable with structured conversations than emotional ones, but he's trying. Last month, he taught me how to use Netflix and we watched an entire season of some lawyer show together, him explaining what was realistic and what was Hollywood nonsense. It was the most time we'd spent in the same room in years. The viral video thing eventually died down, the way internet fame always does. Something else became the story everyone was talking about, and we went back to being a regular family working through regular family problems. I still get messages sometimes from people sharing their own stories about parents and children and the complicated ways families can hurt each other and heal each other. I try to respond to the ones that seem like they need someone to listen. I'm not living in either of their houses permanently. After a month of rotating between Portland and Chicago, I realized that what I needed wasn't to be taken care of by my children. What I needed was to know that I mattered to them, that I was welcome in their lives, that the 30 years I spent building their futures had earned me a place in their present. I found my own apartment here in Portland, 10 minutes from Sarah's house. Small place, 1 bedroom, but it's mine. Michael helped me move in, assembled my new furniture while complaining about the quality of modern construction compared to the stuff I used to build. Sarah helped me decorate, hung my old photos on the walls, including the one of me and her mother that I'd kept on my nightstand for 15 years. I see them both regularly now, not because they feel obligated to check on their elderly father, but because we actually enjoy each other's company. Sarah comes by on Sunday mornings and we cook breakfast together. Turns out she inherited my ability to make pancakes from scratch. Michael calls me every few days and our conversations last longer than 5 minutes now. He's teaching me how to video chat so we can see each other even when he's busy with work. I'm doing okay physically. The physical therapy worked better than the doctors expected. I don't need the cane most days, though I keep it around for when I'm tired or the weather changes. My left hand still shakes a little, but it's steady enough to do small projects around the apartment. I'm even thinking about taking that guitar class I always told myself I'd take someday when I had time. The thing is, I understand now that the video wasn't really about Sarah and Michael being ungrateful children, and it wasn't about me being an abandoned father. It was about a family that forgot how to be a family because we all got so good at playing our roles, provider, recipient, success story, that we forgot about the people underneath those roles. Sarah isn't just the daughter I put through college. She's a woman who loves her students, who worries about doing right by them, who inherited my stubbornness and her mother's kindness. Michael isn't just the son I sent to law school. He's a man who works too much because he inherited my work ethic, who struggles with expressing emotions because I never taught him how to do it, who cares deeply about fairness and justice in ways that make me proud. And I'm not just their provider anymore. I'm Nelson Rodriguez, 67 years old, stroke survivor, viral video star, father who's learning how to be a person his children actually want to spend time with. Yesterday, Sarah brought me a drawing her class made for me. 23 stick figures with the words, Mr. Sarah's dad, written in crayon across the top. Apparently, she's been telling them stories about her father who worked construction, and they wanted to make me something. I put it on my refrigerator next to the old drawing of Daddy working, that she gave back to me. These hands built a lot of things over the years: houses, careers, college educations, wedding funds, futures that my children got to choose for themselves instead of having them chosen for them by poverty and circumstance. But the thing I'm proudest of building now is this: a relationship with my children that's based on who we actually are instead of who we used to be or who we think we're supposed to be. It's not perfect. We still misunderstand each other sometimes, still fall back into old patterns of me trying to fix everything and them trying to manage me instead of just being with me. But we're learning. We're trying. We're choosing each other every day instead of just assuming that DNA and history are enough to hold a family together. 3 months ago, I was an invisible man in a rehabilitation center, convinced that 30 years of sacrifice had earned me nothing but twice-weekly phone calls and the label, "too much work." Today, I'm a father whose children actually want him around. Not because they feel guilty or because they're afraid of what people will think if they don't take care of me, but because they like me. They like spending time with me. They're curious about who I am beyond the man who provided for them. And I like them too. I like getting to know the adults they became, the people they are when they're not trying to be perfect children or successful professionals or anything other than themselves. That might be the most important thing these hands ever built. Not their futures, but our present. Not what we used to be to each other, but what we're becoming. The video is still out there, still getting views and comments from people telling their own stories about family and forgiveness, and the complicated ways we hurt and heal each other. Sometimes I read the comments, see people sharing what they've learned from watching our family fall apart and put itself back together in public. If you're one of those people, if you watched our story and it made you think about your own family, here's what I want you to know. It's never too late to start over. It's never too late to choose each other. It's never too late to stop playing the roles you think you're supposed to play and start being the people you actually are. But don't wait for a stroke or a viral video or public shame to make it happen. Don't wait for a crisis to remember that the people you love are worth the work it takes to love them well. Call your parents. Visit your children. Ask them how they're doing, and actually listen to the answer. Tell them things about yourself they don't know. Let them surprise you. Let yourself be surprised by who they've become. Family isn't something you inherit. It's something you build, every day, with choices and conversations and the decision to keep showing up for each other even when it's inconvenient or difficult or scary. These hands are 67 years old, and they're not as strong as they used to be. But they're not done building yet. They're building something new now. Something better than what we had before. They're building us. Well, that's how these old hands rebuilt a broken family after going viral. Are you the parent who gives too much? Or the child who forgot to be grateful? Let me know below. Huge thanks for your time. Hit like, subscribe to join us, ring that bell. The next story will leave you speechless, I promise.